morning, dear students. Whether there is a COVID situation or non-COVID situation, you have to read, thorough reading, and apply this knowledge in your future. So you have to read and read, whether it is a online or it is a direct communicating lecture. So our today's topic is the endometrial carcinoma. So what are the key points? First, you should know that it is a third most common cancer, genital cancer, but in mortality rate, it is the seventh most common cancer. Why it is so? Because it is early diagnosed, and especially the patient will come in the perimenopausal and postmenopausal patient come to bleeding PV and come to the hospital immediately as if there is a small bleeding after the postmenopausal. So the most benefit for the endometrial cancer is that it is early recognized and treated in the early stages of the cancer. So what are the key points? That the prolonged unopposed estrogen stimulation. What are the conditions that will cause prolonged unopposed estrogen? Such as in nulliparity, in infertility, that is having anovulatory cycles. In perimenopausal patient, there is also in anovulatory cycles. These cycles will cause proliferative endometrium. There is unopposed estrogen and there is absence of progesterone. So the endometrium will grow and there is a exaggerated proliferative phase of the menstrual cycle. And second is the AUB. The first step in evaluation is the office endometrial biopsy. So why the first step in a cases of all AUB? Because this office endometrial biopsy has a chances of diagnostic rate is 90 to 95%. The third point is the histology about. Usually the most common cancer is the endometrioid cancer. But if the pathology comes to the serous and clear cell carcinoma, they are more malignant. 10% of the endometrial carcinoma forms the serous and clear cell carcinoma, but they contribute more than half of the mortality of the endometrial cancer. The fourth key point in the management is the surgical staging. We will not go for the clinical staging in cases of endometrial carcinoma like in CA service. We go always for the surgical staging, whether it is a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 or stage 4. In stage 4, we will individualize the patient about clinical staging or surgical staging. The management in cases, usually the extrafacial hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, peritoneal cytology and lymph node assessment. The word about the hysterectomy, we go for the two types of hysterectomy. One is the intrafacial and second is the extrafacial. In cases of benign condition, we go for the intrafacial hysterectomy. But in cases of endometrial carcinoma, we have to go for the extrafacial hysterectomy. Why extrafacial hysterectomy? Because we have to remove all the lymph nodes, all the lymphatic channel that is present all around the uterus and cervical area. We have to remove this lymphatic drainage with the fascia. So we have to always go for the extrafacial hysterectomy in cases of endometrial hyperplasia with atypia and also in the established endometrial carcinoma. We have to take the peritoneal cytology and according to the gross specimen, we go for the lymph node assessment, whether we have go for the sampling or we have to remove the lymph nodes. Then what are the prognostic variables? Increased age. Increased age as suggested that at about 52 years of age, the menopause should come. If it is still continue, there is a more chances of endometrial carcinoma. Then non-endometrioid grade 3 histology. Okay. What about the grade 1, grade 2 and grade 3? We will discuss later. Deep myometrial invasion. What is deep myometrial invasion? In cases of stage 1, there is less than 50% of myometrial invasion and more than 50% of myometrial. If it is more than 50% of myometrial invasion, there is more chances of hematogenous spread and it will directly go on to the pelvic and para-aortic lymph node. Then large tumor size. If the tumor size is more than 2 cm, then there is a chances of pelvic spread. Then cervical extension. If the glands of the cervix are involved, it is considered always in the stage 1. If the stroma is involved, it is considered as a stage 2. But before taking the specimen out, we cannot decide by any imaging modalities, that is CT, MRI, that whether the glands or the stroma is involved. So after delivering the specimen, we can gross section and frozen section we can go further for the lymph node dissection. And what about the lymph node metastasis? If the stroma is involved, there is a more chances of lymph node metastasis. And intraperitoneal spread. If it is a stage 1A and there is a peritoneal washings are positive, still, after the removing the specimen, there is no further treatment is required. But if the staging is more, then we have to go for the additional management like radiotherapy, chemotherapy or progestin therapy. Post-op radiotherapy and chemotherapy decreases the risk of local regional recurrence and improve disease-free survival. These are the main key points. And that the overall survival rate is the 75 to 85% in cases of stage 1A carcinoma. So what about the epidemiology and the risk factor? So we must know first of all we understand about the key points. Then we should know about the epidemiology and the risk factor. How many risk factors are usually associated with the increased unopposed estrogen. So nulliparity, the relative risk is 2 to 3%. In cases of obesity, obesity itself increases the estrogen production. How it is increases? Because androstenedione that releases from the adrenals, and in the fat is also considered as an endocrine organ. There is a 5-alpha reductase hormone is there. So this androstenedione will convert into the estrone. So that is also a unopposed estrogen in cases of the overweight and obese patient. The relative risk is 3 as well as 10%. In cases of diabetes mellitus, there is also in cases of diabetes there is central obesity is there. Unopposed estrogen therapy, particularly in cases of hormone replacement therapy, if there is a high dose of estrogen is taking prolonged without addition of the progesterone, there is more chances, that is the 4 to 8% of relative risk. So in cases of HRT, we should always include the 10 days progestin therapy. In cases of tamoxifen therapy, in cases of breast cancer, the patient has continuously to take the tamoxifen therapy. Tamoxifen therapy is also indirectly increases the unopposed estrogen level, and it will cause the endometrial hyperplasia or endometrial cancer. So always patient on tamoxifen therapy, follow up and transvaginal sonography and endometrial biopsy should continue for the patient on the tamoxifen therapy. In cases of atypical endometrial hyperplasia, that is, the relative risk is the 8 to 29%. So in 8 to 29% there is endometrial hyperplasia, but 5 to 10% of patient may have a endometrial cancer in cases of atypical endometrial hyperplasia, established endometrial cancer. So we have to closely follow up with endometrial hyperplasia, atypical endometrial hyperplasia, and if they have fertility completed, then we can go for the extrafacial hysterectomy. And what that is called the Lynch 2 syndrome. The previous name is the HNPCC. So colorectal cancer and endometrial cancer is also increased in cases of Lynch 2 syndrome. These are the patient of the high risk for the endometrial cancer. The lifetime risk is 30 to 40% in cases of Lynch 2 syndrome. And the relative risk for developing the endometrial carcinoma is 20%. And also in cases of early menarche and late menopause, the relative risk is the 2 to 4%. Then something about the endometrial hyperplasia. What is endometrial hyperplasia? It is a morphological and biological changes in the glands as well as stroma. In cases of simple without atypia, there is cystic dilatation of the glands and there is an increase in the glandular to stromal ratio. The morphology of the glands are patent. But if there is a complex hyperplasia, the morphology is also changed. The cystic glands become, there is a overcrowding of the cystic glands, there is infolding of the glands, and there is also papillary projection. And if there is a atypia, the atypical cells will present in the atypical hyperplasia, whether it is a simple or complex. What are the atypical cells? Nuclear cytoplasmic ratio is increased, cellular atypia is present, more prominent nucleoli, alteration in cytoplasmic to nucleus ratio. These are the signs of atypia. So in cases of complex hyperplasia, the chances of progression to cancer is 29%. So if patient is in the wants to preserve the fertility and have not completed their obstetric history, we may go for the medical management. That is the progesterone, that is megestrol acetate 40 to 160 milligram for 3 to 6 months. But always reassess the patient after 6 months, because as we stop the progesterone therapy, there is further recurrence of the endometrial hyperplasia. So we should tell the patient that complete the family history and go for the extrafacial simple hysterectomy. But if there is a atypical hyperplasia and has completed family history, advise extrafacial hysterectomy. That is something about the prevention or cancer screening. So how will we prevent the endometrial cancer? So like cervical cancer, the screening is very limited. Screening is there in cases of endometrial cancer because screening cannot be done in all patients, and there is a no single method that will decrease the mortality as well as morbidity of the patient in cases of endometrial cancer. So screening should be offered only to the high risk patient. What are the high risk patient? We have discussed in this slide. These are the high risk patient. So we go for the screening in these patient: obese patient, diabetes, unopposed estrogen, tamoxifen, atypical endometrial hyperplasia, Lynch 2, late menopause. These patients go for the screening. Okay. So AUP in perimenopausal patient and postmenopausal patient, we go for the screening irrespective of the age, whether it is a postmenopausal is minimal or non-persistent bleeding. We go for the office endometrial biopsy because it will, the diagnostic accuracy is 92 to 95%. Then we come our topic, that is the endometrial cancer. What are the clinical features? First, the first symptom in cases of the postmenopausal women, that is the vaginal bleeding and discharge. In perimenopausal women, there is menometrorrhagia, oligomenorrhea or abnormal uterine bleeding. It may present as a pelvic pressure and discomfort. Why there is a pelvic pressure and discomfort? In cases of type 2 endometrial carcinoma, that is in the postmenopausal woman, where the hormone is very less and there is a prolonged postmenopausal case, there is a cervical stenosis. So the bleeding as well as discharge will not come out from the cervix, and it will continue to collect in the endometrium. So they may present as a hematometra or pyometra. Only 5% of the patients are asymptomatic. So we should know about what are the causes of the postmenopausal bleeding. First is the endometrial atrophy. Why there is endometrial atrophy? Because all the follicles are lost and there is regular ovarian cycle, that is the estrogen and progesterone, proliferative phase, secretory phase, ovulation, estrogen, progesterone are lost. So their most common cause is the atrophy, that is also called the senile atrophy, and it may cause vaginal and cervical bleeding also. That is called the senile atrophy. Next comes the estrogen replacement therapy. That is the hormone replacement therapy in cases of the postmenopausal bleeding. And second is the endometrial polyp. If there is an endometrial polyp in the postmenopausal woman or in the perimenopausal woman, the chances of the cancer in the tip of the endometrial polyp is 2 to 12%. And we have already discussed about the endometrial hyperplasia. And the endometrial cancer is only 10% causes of the postmenopausal bleeding. So the postmenopausal bleeding we can divide into the non-genital and genital. In cases of genital, it may be uterine or it may be extrauterine. Non-genital causes we can rule out, but in genital causes we have to carefully examine the vagina and cervix and to rule out any cancer of the vagina, vulva or the cervix, and also the endometrial polyp coming through the os, or it may be traumatic injury also in cases of the vagina. And in cases of genital with uterine cancer, we have to rule out the endometrial cancer. So these are the symptoms. What about the signs? With signs we can rule out the staging. So there is no findings in the general examination. First we always palpate the supraclavicular and superficial inguinal lymph nodes. During physical examination, they may be palpable in cases of stage 4 endometrial carcinoma. There is usually no findings in the physical examination, but the obesity always is a constitutional factor. On abdominal examination, there is a ascites, hepatic and omental metastasis. Careful vaginal and cervical examination and bimanual rectovaginal examination. In cases of bimanual rectovaginal examination, we go for the uterine mobility, uterine size. We may suspect the pyometra or hematometra. We can assess the adnexal mass, and we can see the rectovaginal pouch, and we can see the nodularity in the deep pouch or posterior vaginal fornix. It may be present due to the metastasis. So how the obesity can cause the unopposed estrogen? Adipocytes, I say that adipocytes or fat is also an endocrine organ. So androstenedione released from the adrenals even in the postmenopausal patient will convert by adipocytes. 5-alpha reductase will convert into the estrone. Then ultimately the estradiol, small amount of estrogen is also secreted by the postmenopausal ovaries, and these adipocytes and these estradiol will act on the endometrial cells directly on the endoplasmic reticulum or endoplasmic receptors or estrogen receptors on the endometrial cells, and also the adipocytes will release the adipokines, that is leptin, interleukin 6, 8, TNF alpha and MCP1. They will act on the epidermal growth factor and insulin-like growth factor that will act on the endometrial cells. That will ultimately go into the endometrial cells and causes cellular proliferation and hyperplasia. So this is the mechanism how in the obese patient there is a unopposed estrogen present in cases of obesity. So next come to the diagnosis. So how will you diagnose the endometrial cancer? I repeat that office endometrial aspiration biopsy has a diagnostic accuracy rate of 90 to 98%. It is very cheap instrument. There is no catching of the cervix with the tenaculum. So chances of uterine cramps are very less, and so the compliance of the patient is also increased. There is no need of anesthesia, and the cost of this aspiration biopsy is also very less. So it is a OPD procedure, and in cases of 95% of cases we can take the adequate amount of sample. The Pap test is unreliable for diagnosis of endometrial carcinoma because only 30 to 50% of endometrial cancer can be diagnosed. But the transvaginal sonography aid our diagnosis. Whenever the endometrial thickness is more than 4 mm in a postmenopausal woman, there is a polypoidal mass in the endometrial cells during transvaginal sonography, and if there is a endometrial fluid collection. we may suspect the endometrial carcinoma. Then we go for the thorough office endometrial biopsy. If we cannot get the sample enough, the gold standard is the hysteroscopically guided endometrial biopsy. But it is very expensive, it required anesthesia, so we should go for the endometrial aspiration biopsy. What about the pathological classification? Why it is important for the pathological classification? Because mainly the serous and clear cell carcinoma comes even if in the stage 1 the mortality rate is 50%. So we should always see what is the histology of the endometrial specimen. And in the mortality rate, if there is a serous and clear cell carcinoma, the 50% is the mortality rate even if it is diagnosed in the stage 1. Mortality as well as recurrence rate is also high in cases of the serous and clear cell carcinoma. So, in 75 to 80% of cases, the histology is the endometrial adenocarcinoma. Sometimes with adenocarcinoma, small amount of benign squamous cells are also present in endometrioid adenocarcinoma. This mixed pattern is called the adenoacanthoma. Then the mucinous carcinoma, papillary serous and clear cell carcinoma again is very malignant. Squamous cell carcinoma is very rare, undifferentiated and mixed carcinoma. This is about the pathological classification and the importance in the management. Then what about the grading? Grading means what amount of malignant cells are present in the specimen. They may be non-squamous or non-morular growth pattern. If it is grade 1, there is less than 5% of malignancy chances. If it is grade 2, there is chances 6 to 50%. If it is grade 3, it is more than 50%. If there is a grade 3, then we have to go for the additional management. After surgical management, additional radiotherapy, chemotherapy, we should go. So what are the types of endometrial carcinoma? Type 1 and type 2. This is very important classification because the age incidence is also different. Usually, in cases of perimenopausal women, there is endometrial carcinoma type 1, and in cases of the postmenopausal women, that is 10 years postmenopausal women, these are the patient has a type 2 carcinoma. So, unopposed estrogen is present in the type 1. Menopausal status usually in the perimenopausal patients. Hyperplasia usually present in the type 1 because they are estrogen dependent. If we remove the unopposed estrogen from these patients in the perimenopausal women, the hyperplasia can regress. What about the race? White and black. Grade. The grade is always grade 1 and 2 in cases of type 1, and in cases of type 2 there is a grade 3. Myometrial invasion. Always there is a superficial myometrial invasion that is less than 50%. And if there is a deep myometrial invasion more than 50%, there is more chances of hematogenesis spread, and pelvic and para-aortic lymph node are always or maybe metastasis. What is the specific subtypes? Usually endometrioid, and in type 2 there is a serous or clear. What about the behavior? Usually there is a stable. If there is a perimenopausal woman and there is a stage 1A1, there is a lymph node spread is 0, almost 0. So we go for the only for extrafacial hysterectomy, and lymph node metastasis is also G. But if it is type 2, it is an aggressive behavior and mortality rate is high. So before operating or before go for the surgical staging, we go for the pre-op evaluation. First is the physical examination, then one is the CA-125. Usually CA-125 is a marker of the epithelial ovarian carcinoma. This the value in the normal woman is 35 IU per ml. But we go for the endometrial carcinoma CA-125 only see the prognosis. After surgery, if their CA-125 is decreasing side, we may consider that we have completely surgical reduction is there. And what is the role of clinical staging in endometrial cancer? It is very less. The role of clinical staging is very important and most important in the cervical cancer. But in cases of endometrial cancer, the clinical staging is less value. We can go for the clinical staging in cases of stage 3 and stage 4, in which we have decided not to go for the surgery, only radiation or chemotherapy on the individual basis. And lymphatic spread is 0 if there is a stage 1 superficial invasion, that is less than 50%, grade 1 or 2, and tumor size is less than 2 cm. So in cases of stage 1A1, we go only for the extrafacial hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. That is the FIGO staging of the carcinoma endometrium. This is changed in 2009. In stage 1, only 2 stages are there, 1A and 1B. That is tumor confined to the uterus, less than 50% invasion of the myometrium, and more than 50% invasion of the myometrium. If there is more than 50% invasion, there is a chances of hematogenous spread. The stage 2 is involved the cervical stroma but does not extend beyond the uterus. In cervix also there is a glandular component and the stromal component. If it involves only the glands, it comes into the stage 1. If it involves the stroma, the chances of lymphatic spread is 30 to 40%. So I will repeat that if only glands are involved in cervix, it will include in the stage 1. If the stroma is involved, it will include into the stage 2. In cases of stage 3, there is progression of the cancer. It may progress laterally into the uterus, that is into the serosa, or adnexal invasion. It may come out below the cervix, that is vagina, and laterally into the parametrium, that is 3B. And what about the 3C? It will metastasize into the pelvic and para-aortic lymph node because more than 50% of the myometrial invasion has occurred. So C1 and C2, pelvic lymph node and para-aortic lymph node. Stage 4, that is extension to the pelvic wall, lower 1/3 of the vagina, hydronephrosis or non-functioning kidney. That is 4A, invasion to the bladder and bowel mucosa, and 4B, that is the distant metastasis, including abdominal or involvement of the inguinal lymph nodes. So, if there is a non-functioning kidney and hydronephrosis is present in the CA cervix, it is stage 3. But if it is in the endometrium, it is stage 4. So, what are the routes of metastasis? that is contiguous extension means continuous extension means it may involve the myometrium and serosal, it may involve the cervix, vagina or any other structure. Hematogenous spread through the myometrium, deep myometrium. Lymphatic spread is more important when it is involve the cervical stroma. And there is a peritoneal spread, when it will involve the adnexal structures. So what about the management? What about the management of the clinical stage 1? Always in all stages we have go for the surgical management or exploratory laparotomy for surgical staging. Primary surgery followed by individualized radiation therapy. What do you mean by primary surgery? Primary surgery is the extrafacial hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. This is enough. We should not go for the radical hysterectomy. And there is, if it is 1A1, the lymph node spread is 0, so we can take the lymph node sampling. But there is no need of radical hysterectomy with bilateral pelvic lymphadenectomy and para-aortic lymphadenectomy. The morbidity and mortality is increased by this surgery. So, in cases of stage 1A1, we go for the extrafacial hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and lymph node sampling. And then we individualize after the receiving the specimen. If there is a serous and clear cells, if there is a higher grading, we may consider for vaginal wall radiation, extended field radiation, whole abdomen radiation, progestin therapy and chemotherapy by progestin therapy. Some perimenopausal age or stage or type 1 cancers are estrogen or progesterone dependent. If they are estrogen dependent, the survival rate is less, but if they are progesterone dependent, the chances of survival rate is increased and we go for the post-operative progestin therapy. So this is the role of estrogen and progesterone receptors, presence of estrogen and progesterone receptors in specimen. Then what is the management of clinical stage 2? Yes, in clinical stage 2, we go for the radical hysterectomy, bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and pelvic and para-aortic lymphadenectomy. Because the myometrium is more than 50% involved and the cervical stroma is involved, that will lead to the lymphatic spread to the pelvic and para-aortic lymph. Then after that we go for the combined radiation and surgery, that is extended pelvic radiation, intracavitary radium and cesium and followed by surgery. We can go either, first we can go for the radiation treatment and after 6 weeks only the extrafacial hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is required. If patient is not fit for surgery. Or we can go first for the surgery, then radiation. Okay? We can do whichever we want to do or according to the patient condition. And what about the stage 3? The management of stage 3 is, it must be individualized. But initial operative evaluation and treatment should be considered because of occult lymph node metastasis and intraperitoneal spread. In cases of stage 3 and stage 4, usually patients are excessively obese, they have a diabetes, hypertension and any other comorbidities are there. So we remain safe, or the patient morbidity is more if we will go for the surgical management. So we can individualize our management according to the patient condition. In cases of stage 4 is patient dependent. Combination of surgery, radiation therapy, systemic hormonal therapy and chemotherapy. That is stage 4. This is our specimen in which there is a stage 1A1, there is a polypoidal growth, and this polypoidal growth will come positive for endometrial carcinoma. There is small cystic areas are there in the myometrium, that is adenomyotic uterus, and there is a superficial inguinal proliferative or secretory or malignant cells on gross examination may be spread, and there is a loss of endometrial myometrial invasion. There is irregularities in the endometrial myometrial junction. So this is end our lecture. One thing is left, that is what is the corpus cancer syndrome. The triad, that is nulliparity, diabetes and hypertension, is called the corpus cancer syndrome. So we have to carefully evaluate the patient of obese, with diabetes, with essential hypertension, and all high risk patient we have to screen. There is no need of screening in all cases, all postmenopausal patient, because usually it is diagnosed in stage 1A1 and very good survival. So thank you for all for listening my lecture.